Barely 6 years ago, Poblacion was a nondescript neighborhood in the outskirts of Makati. Today, it's the hippest place in town where you'd be lucky to get a table or parking. This week on Profiles, we talked to visionary entrepreneur Rommel Marasigan, who saw the potential of Makati's seedy Poblacion backstreets and is transforming the area into one of the most vibrant scenes in Manila. It all started when he took a seedy massage parlor from A to Z. So Rommel, how did you even discover this area? What was this building before? Why build here?
Well, actually, this building was empty for 3 years before we got into it, no? And it used to be the largest massage parlor, I think, in Makati. What a perfect spot when the whole establishment was closed down.
And it's a happening place. I'd love to see if you can tell us about what you've done inside. We'll go inside.
Yes.
Why did you name it Z?
We said something simple and just a letter, like a Z, it's the last letter of the alphabet.
Yeah.
Right? But aside from that also, we were thinking that the next generation that's coming in is a Generation Z. What better hostel to cater to their needs than Z Hostel?
Yes. We never really heard of hostels in the Philippines, no? What makes this unique?
We're the first hostel of this size with having a whole building of 7 floors.
Yeah.
Most of the hostels in the Philippines only had 30 beds and were occupying an old house or a floor of a building. We were the first one who ventured out into getting the entire building and having a 24-hour cafe and having a lobby, actually.
The idea behind Z Hostel was sparked by Rommel's innate love for travel. So I noticed this quote. This is a very, I guess, from our generation, no?
Yeah.
This quote, of course, from the beach.
Yes.
Why? Why did you choose this?
So this is the movie was actually that inspired me to travel around the world. I actually backpacked through Thailand. I followed through the same route and tried to find myself. That movie was very influential for me to start off traveling and create this hostel.
It's about finding that moment, how you feel, and that's what you're creating here.
That's right, that's right.
That's why good vibes. You always say good vibes only.
Yes, paradise is not a place, but it's how you feel at a moment, and this is it.
His travels meant experiencing the hostel lifestyle firsthand to understand a travel culture not many Filipinos are familiar with.
I stayed in a lot of hostels during my research. I had a list of the best hostels in the world, and I tried to go through a lot of them during a 3-year period, and took a lot of notes and photos and ideas, and this is the result of all of that.
This is just 3 years old, and it's so successful. What have been the biggest challenges for you along the way?
We didn't know whether it's going to work or not. We had no pegs, no benchmark to follow. At first, we were doing half of our target. So I said, oh, this might not work, because our target was 40%, and we were doing half of that for occupancy.
Who's your clientele?
The clientele we have, they're called Flashpackers. They're different from backpackers. They're flashier backpackers who are working already. So their age group is 25 to 35. And they have more spending power, more discriminating in their accommodations and facilities that they're looking for, not your basic backpacker accommodations. 87% of our clientele are actually from Europe, and we have 13% local in other countries.
Some guests stay here because of this hostel, right?
One of the managers here at the hostel is actually from Denmark, and he's one of our first guests. He came on our 2nd month of operation, and he's still here now.
As Rommel showed me around Z Hostel, I could see why many of his guests have found it so hard to leave.
This is our 6-packs dorm.
It's so nice. I mean, I'd never imagined a hostel look. It's pretty posh for a hostel. And what differentiates a hostel from a hotel?
There are 2 things, no? First thing is a hostel sells per bed. You can just get a bed in a room for 6 and just pay for that bed. The other difference is they say it's the letter S. S stands for social. So hostels are very social environments. In a hotel, you probably can stay there and not see anybody. In a hostel, it's not the same. You come there to meet other people. So
you can mix, you can have males and females together if you can request for all female, all
yes,
male.
That's right. Well, all the dorm rooms are normally mixed dorms, but if the guests want an all-female dorm, they can request for that and we can block it off.
Each room is made more practical and guest-friendly with Rommel's attention to detail and personal touches, picked up from his own backpacking experiences. What's the thing you learned most from all your traveling backpacking that you really implemented here?
How do you make a a shared accommodation a little bit more private or a little bit more comfortable. I mean, that's the thing that we try to do, and having more space and having your own shower and toilet inside the room. I realized that having a light in the lockers was very, very helpful at night when you're packing or getting your stuff. I used to have a flashlight in my mouth and I'd have to fiddle around, and it's so difficult. We also thought of having plugs here because sometimes you'd like to charge your equipment. We thought of having these plugs placed inside the locker so you can put it in and you can lock the locker in and go out and have dinner and come back and you can use it.
It's so well thought out. For less than 1,000 pesos a night, you get a cozy bed, a clean bathroom, and a free drink every sunset at the roof deck.
This is where we have our sunset session starting at 6 o'clock. You get a free drink, and we have our interns and some of our staff trying to explain to you all the things that you can do in the Philippines and answer all the questions that guests might have. And you get a great view of the skyline of Fort Bonifacio and Makati as well.
It's not easy to be in the hospitality business. You have to please everyone, a lot of complaints. You mentioned these core values. What are they? What are the things you have to make sure are essential?
You just have to make sure that you have good value for money, you're authentic. Also trying to make sure that the guests are happy. If there's anything that we can help, we make sure that we do that. And we create that environment where they're safe, and they get to meet a lot of guests. They feel comfortable, and there's a good vibe. It's about time we put hosteling in the Philippines on the map. I felt like I lived all my life in a hostel. Growing up with 12 siblings, we had to share rooms, we had to eat together, it was very social.
Rommel Marasigan has always had an instinct for success, and vision is really just the beginning. To take it all the way, it helps to have a grand plan, a meticulous eye for detail, and the willingness to put in the hours. A lesson he learned in his own backyard. Rommel, you come from a big family. You're 13 kids. What was it like for you growing up?
The eldest was a girl, and the youngest was also a girl.
Yeah.
And we had 11 boys in between.
Probably was like a hostel at home, no? The gulo at home.
Actually, I feel so comfortable running a hostel. I just realized it's because I felt like I lived all my life in a hostel. Growing up with 12 siblings, we had to share rooms, we had to eat together, it was very social. I think, I remember.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why, hence, the hostel is such a natural jump for me.
You spent a lot of time in the beach because your parents had a beach house in Batangas.
They would take us to the beach maybe 2 months of the year, which is now called La Luz. My parents wanted to start a resort from our beach house. They asked me if I could help out for a little bit.
He went beyond expectations, turning the family beach house into a 40-room beach resort, cited as TripAdvisor's Traveler's Choice, hosting up to 2,000 guests on day trips. In Rommel's first foray into hospitality, the then accountant took the Batangas beach scene and turned it into the luxe experience of a 5-star resort.
My experience was being a guest at the hotels that I traveled to. I was traveling about 80% of the time for work while I was based in New York. We were doing audit and acquisitions at that time. We would travel all around the world. 6 to 8 months of the year we were out. I was so fortunate enough to be able to try all these higher-end hotels and resorts for the job. And I saw how things were being done.
So you're picking up these bits and pieces.
I didn't realize that that's my only exposure to real hospitality.
Yeah.
I just knew how I wanted to be treated because I experienced it myself.
For 12 years, Rommel practically lived in La Luz, taking a hands-on approach to managing the resort. A lot of that time was invested in building friendships with his guests. In turn, they kept coming back. Some even became partners in his next venture.
I try to remember every guest. I tried to talk to every group. I tried to get to know one person in that group. And through that personal relationship, they were able to text me directly or ask for whatever they needed. And they felt really at home.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we brought in here into Z Hostel.
You seem to have this magic touch for these businesses. What does it take to make a grand plan like that come to life?
It starts off with research. I'd spend months looking at the internet, and once I find all the data that I need, articles, I've read so much articles, I read hours and hours on end, and once I found all the sites and places to see where to get inspiration, I'd take a trip and learn even more and talk to people. I think that's a formula for coming back and being able to implement that. Do your research and try to do your best.
He always thinks of the bigger picture. He's thinking of the future, and he always has this vision of what he wants to happen. You get inspired as well, and you learn a lot.
This is my second family, second home. There's this camaraderie, like even if it's not our job, we would like help each other out just so we could make things work here.
He's always 5 steps ahead. Di ba? 1, 2 steps siya, 5. Talagang, wow! Magugulat ka. So parang, saan ang galing yung idea na yun? Pero yun nga, that idea is brilliant and you're way ahead of everyone.
We just wanted to put up a hostel and make it the best hostel, but we didn't expect that it would affect a whole neighborhood. It's a lot bigger than we expected.
Like most best-laid plans, there's always room for surprises. For Rommel and his partners, Z Hostel paved the way for PLUD, Poblacion Land and Urban Development, an unexpected fork in the road that led them from hospitality to real estate development.
This was our first property that we got after Z Hostel. And these are the four first establishments that we worked with to open up Z Street.
Today, most of the establishments that line Poblacion streets are pubs, cafes, and restaurants. What Rommel envisions is a district where you'll find something for everyone, with small enterprises catering to various tastes while preserving Poblacion's neighborhood vibe, similar to many iconic districts around the world.
We're trying to call this the Z Street.
Okay.
In the future, we're hoping that we can put an arch there to just introduce people. When they come in, they know, oh, what street is this? This is called Z Street. No?
Yeah.
We had to get this building. We had to preserve it. This is one of the most iconic buildings in the whole neighborhood. If you look at it, it's so green. All the modern buildings are all made out of glass. But this one is still, covered with vines, but it takes years and years to grow. These are residents here, as you can see. Hello.
So you're getting some complaints from the complaints
yes,
about
of course.
the noise. But
sometimes we do. Of course, it gets loud, and we have to really tone it down because we're
Yeah.
just in this. It's really their neighborhood, no?
Yeah.
Right. These are residents right here as well.
Among Poblacion's houses stands one that's seen better days, the ruins, which burnt down in 2010. Though it remains in its scorched state, it's been given a new lease on life as the home of an art residency program.
The dream is to be able to create a foundation to support local artists, right, and evolve. And we're getting some support from some embassies who are very interested in the art residency program. This is the place where people can come in, like we were saying, that this concept of art for all.
Yeah.
So kids can come in, and they have come in, and the foreign artists are actually quite helpful. The French guys are very friendly and very accommodating.
Yeah. Just as Rommel transformed his family's beach resort, his grand plan now is to gentrify Poblacion, turning it into a hub for lifestyle and culture. Here, both backpackers and locals can experience what's truly and endearingly Pinoy.
We're encouraging everybody to be walking on the street and try to see and visit all the other shops and feel like they're actually in Manila, not an air-conditioned environment which everything is controlled.
Real estate development was the farthest from Rommel's mind when he put up Z Hostel. But it came as a natural offshoot of the business when he realized his guests needed a fun and safe neighborhood to roam. That's when he began to take an interest in property.
We've been acquiring or leasing property around the area on Don Pedro Street, where Z is, and trying to redevelop that with other partners and creating these restaurants and bars and retail shops that you see today. Right?
And it's really this nice sense of community, You're bringing back, it looks like you're bringing out, it's a rustic feel or the old, like an old Manila feeler. People say this is the Malate now.
Every major city in the world would have a main street where everybody would hang out, from both local and foreign. And if you look at the Philippines now, specifically Manila, you can't name a place anymore. If you would ask people, they would always refer to a mall, and it's just not the same, no?
Yeah.
And I thought, that's a bit strange. Why don't we start something like that? Create a neighborhood on Main Street again, And what would be a better place than Poblacion?
You know, maybe Filipinos don't like walking outdoors. Now you have these little streets, like kind of like your shopkeeper types kind of thing, right?
You know, the evolution of the shops here started, about just a couple of years ago. And it started off with F&B, and now we're getting a lot more different stores, a lot more diversity. It's a great mix.
It seems to be an antithesis to big developers, which are building huge buildings.
What we realized too, what's happening to development, it's following a same format. They build a mall and they build all the residential accommodations around the mall, and everybody's sort of forced to be indoors, right? And we lose all the neighborhood feel. So that's what we're trying to do here in Poblacion. We're encouraging everybody to be walking on the street and try to see and visit all the other shops and feel like they're actually in Manila, not an air-conditioned environment which everything is controlled and in a way artificial. The real environment is actually on the street.
Rommel's grand plan goes far beyond Z Street, extending to an entire area north of Kalayaan, an area fondly called NoCal. At night, especially on weekends, it comes to life with people from all over the world and all walks of life. And who better to take me around the scene than Rommel himself, who guided me through a Poblacion pub crawl. I remember going here, it's always packed.
Yes, now you see the vibe that we're talking about, no?
It's usually more full when it's a Saturday.
Yes. On a Friday, you can't even get a spot. This is Alamat, and they have all the craft beer. They have the most number of local craft beers.
Filipino
craft beers, yes, and the best craft beers. Our focus is in north of Kalayaan only.
Okay.
This area we're seeing right now is the areas that is a neighborhood that's always been here.
Yeah.
Because on the other side, it's a bit more commercial already. They've been around for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
This has just been happening the past 2 to 3 years. Now we'll take you to Agimat.
Agimat is a foraging bar with a uniquely nationalistic concept. Oh, I love it. I love the wood.
So now this is the recycled wood, concrete, steel. Right? And they look at this, they have all these candles around. Because you're entering into a different realm.
You're imagining mga Pinoy
Yes, that's right.
Agimat's mixologist, Kalel Demetrio, who has put a lot of historical research into creating cocktails using indigenous ingredients, showed us his best-selling concoctions.
There he goes here.
Wow. This job entails a lot of public relations, drinking, eating, so it's a nightlife. Would you say that's really part of your lifestyle?
It's a bit tiring if you think about it. If you're out every day, 7 days a week, I don't think anybody can last. But then again, the job sometimes calls for it, and I'd have to entertain, and I think that's part of hospitality, really. And I enjoy talking to people and trying to explain what the Philippines is like, or just show them what's happening to Poblacion. I think that's quite important for them to hear it from me.
Like you said, you're always working. What keeps you inspired? Where do you get your new ideas?
The thought of what the future would be like if nobody started this neighborhood or this concept. Otherwise, I think that we'll just follow the same format, the same construction, the same development of concrete jungles. For the developers, sometimes it's a very exclusive approach. They would buy property, maybe 10, 15 hectares. They'll clear out everything and build a whole brand new community that has no relation to its past. What we're trying to do is whoever wants to participate and maybe be creative with their property, they either lease it or they might decide to sell it. We never thought of buying everything or leasing everything. It's just whatever is available, we just take it up and work with many other establishments as well. Our approach is different in the sense we have an inclusive approach.
And on that note, we drank to Poblacion's bright future.
So we're gonna try each one. We'll pass it on, right?
Wow, it's so good. It's strong. It's so
He's got the kick, right?
Yeah. Did you ever expect all this? I mean, you were an auditor, you were in accounting. Did you think you'd be where you are now?
I never thought I'd be in real estate development. No, I've always been in hospitality. It comes naturally, though. When you're in hospitality, having your property, then you go into another one. It's sort of very similar. You know, some people say the world is mine. I like to think that the world is ours, you know. You gotta work on it, and what inspires me is what would happen in the future. It's actually not just for this generation, but for the next generation.
Serving up unforgettable moments comes so naturally to Rommel because he genuinely wants everyone to experience his vision of living to the full and to be part of the movement to build a thriving community. His boundless energy, dedication, and perseverance keep him on top of the game and certainly inspire me to make positive changes and spread good vibes all around.
Well, I'm really feeling it. The good vibes, it's everywhere. How do you make sure the good vibes keep on coming?
Well, I
How
think
do you define that?
it's just trying to be, you know, real, authentic, and nice to everyone.
Yeah.
And I think everyone becomes nice to you as well.
And it's like a pleasant surprise. I mean, I didn't expect this, even though you told me about it.
Yeah, when you're actually here, it's totally different. I can describe it to you all day.
You have to feel it. Yes.
But you have to feel it, and then you have to feel the people behind the whole concept.
Yeah.
And each place we've been to, the people behind it are all around.
Thanks again. Cheers. Thanks for bringing this to us.
Cheers.
Rommel.
Cheers, Betsy.
Cheers.
Cheers.